What I'm about to share with you is something most men will never discover. Not because it's hidden, because they're too busy playing the wrong game entirely. When a woman starts craving an older man, and I mean craving, not just casually interested, something shifts deep inside her. Her nervous system starts doing something primal, something almost ancient. And before she lets herself fall, before she allows that emotional surrender to happen, she does something most men completely miss. She tests him. Not with dramatic confrontations, not with obvious games, with three very specific questions. Questions that aren't really questions at all. They're signals. They're her subconscious running a calibration, measuring something she can't even fully explain to herself. And here's the raw reality. Most older men fail these tests without ever knowing a test was happening. Forget the pickup lines. Forget the NLP scripts. Forget every manipulative tactic those other channels push on you. That stuff is noise, brother. What we're talking about today is something completely different. Something that operates at the level of nervous system chemistry and primal instinct. By the time this video ends, you'll understand exactly what these three questions are, what she's actually measuring when she asks them, and how the right response doesn't just pass the test, it makes her feel something she hasn't felt in a long time. But I need to warn you about one of the three, the last one, because it's the most dangerous. And I'm saving it for the end of this video because if I give it to you now, out of context, it could cost you everything. So stay with me. Let's start with what's actually happening beneath the surface. When a younger woman feels drawn to an older man, there is a neurological reason for that pull. Studies show that the female nervous system is biologically wired to detect what researchers call stability signals, unconscious indicators of emotional groundedness, resources, and the capacity to protect. These aren't things she decides to look for. Her nervous system hunts for them automatically, like sonar. And here's what almost no one talks about. She doesn't just feel those signals, she has to test them. Because her subconscious knows that these things can be faked. A well-dressed man with good posture can look stable. But her nervous system needs more than optics. It needs proof. So she asks. Not directly, brother. Never directly. That's the part that trips men up. The test is disguised as conversation, as casual curiosity, even as vulnerability. And the man who doesn't know what's happening will answer like a man who has something to prove. He'll over-explain, he'll perform, he'll shrink. And just like that, before a second date ever happens, she's already withdrawn. I remember talking to a man, late 40s, successful, genuinely good guy, who told me about a woman he'd been out with twice. Third date, she asked him a simple question over dinner. Seemed innocent. He answered honestly, he thought. She became quieter the rest of the evening. There was no fourth date. He never knew why. But I knew exactly what had happened. He'd failed the test without hearing the bell. That's what this video is for. Now, let's get into the actual map. Because these three questions, the tests she's running, they come in levels, and each one goes deeper than the last. Each one is trying to access a different layer of who you actually are. Level 1 is the identity test. At some point, usually early, often within the first 2 or 3 conversations, she will ask you some version of this question. What are you looking for? Simple. Seems harmless, and almost every man answers it wrong. Here's what most men do. They either get too casual, I'm just enjoying the moment, seeing what happens, or they get too intense. I'm looking for something real, something serious. Both responses fail, and they fail for the same reason. They tell her nothing about who you are. They only tell her what you want. She doesn't care what you want. Not yet. What she's actually asking with that question, what her subconscious is measuring, is this. Do you have an identity that exists independent of her? A man who says, I'm just seeing what happens, signals he has no direction, no anchor. He is available to be shaped by whoever he's with. And that terrifies the female nervous system on an instinctive level, even if she can't name why. A man who goes too heavy too fast signals desperation. He needs her to complete something, and she can feel that need pressing against her like a hand on her chest. The right answer? Brother, it's not a rehearsed line. It's something that comes from a man who has actually done the inner work, a man who knows himself. The identity test is passed not with the content of your answer, but with the quality of your selfhood underneath the answer. What she's listening for, at a chemical level, is certainty. Not rigidity, not arrogance. Certainty. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need her to validate it. When you answer from that place, something shifts in her body. You can almost feel it if you're paying attention. A kind of settling, like something in her exhaled. Level 2 is the history test. This one comes a little later. It's sneakier. And this is where I see the most successful, accomplished men completely collapse. She will ask you, directly or indirectly, about your past. Your marriage, if you had one, your last relationship, why things ended, how you handled it. And she is not asking because she's nosy. She's not asking because she wants to judge you. Her nervous system is running a very specific scan. What she's looking for is this. How does this man carry his past? Does he carry it like a wound he keeps reopening? Does he carry it like resentment he calls self-awareness? Does he carry it like blame dressed up as insight? Or does he carry it like a man who has actually metabolized his experience? Because here's the truth almost no one talks about, brother. A man who has genuinely grown from pain is one of the rarest and most magnetic things a woman can encounter. Not a man who performs healing. Not a man who recites the therapy language. A man who has actually been inside the fire and come out with more clarity, not more bitterness. When you talk about your past from a place of peace, not forced positivity, not glossed over performance, her nervous system registers something profound. It registers safety, real safety. The kind that says, this man will not make me pay for what someone else did to him. Most men fail the history test not because they say the wrong thing, but because they say too much. They open old chapters as proof that they've healed, which is, ironically, evidence that they haven't. The healed man doesn't need to tell you he's healed. His relationship with the story proves it. Answer your past with brevity and grace. Own what belongs to you. Release what doesn't. Let the rest live in silence. That silence, it speaks volumes. Now, before I give you level 3, the one I promised you earlier, the one that changes everything, I need to make sure you actually understand what's been happening in these first 2 levels. Because there is a thread running through both of them. A single principle that underlies the entire structure of how an older man either earns or loses a woman's deepest instinctive trust. That principle is this: masculine presence, not performance, not dominance theater. Presence. The felt sense that a man is fully here, in his own skin, in his own life, not anxiously orbiting someone else's reality. When she is running these tests, what she is ultimately checking for is whether you have that presence, whether her gravity will pull you off center, or whether you have your own center of gravity entirely. Most men, when they sense a woman's intensity, her scrutiny, her quiet withdrawal after a question, her testing, they start to drift toward her. They start adjusting their answers, softening their edges, trying to become whatever she seems to want. And here is the devastating irony. That drift is exactly what kills the attraction. Because what she craves at the deepest primal level is a man who cannot be moved by her testing. Not because he's indifferent to her, but because he is so rooted in himself that her tests don't destabilize him. They just reveal him. That is what she's looking for. Keep that in your chest as we go into level 3. Level 3 is the surrender test. And brother, this is the one that will either make everything possible or close the door entirely. At some point, and this usually happens after a real moment of connection, often when the emotional atmosphere between you two has gotten genuinely warm and close, she will ask you something that sounds, on the surface, like a small and almost trivial question. She might say something like, "So where do you see this going?" Or, "What does this look like for you?" Or sometimes it's even more oblique, a comment about a couple she knows, watching how you react to a story about commitment, noticing your body language when future language enters the room. The words change, but what she's asking is always the same thing. She is asking, is this man afraid of me? Not afraid in the obvious way, not afraid to approach, to touch, to speak. She already knows you're not that kind of afraid. The fear she's scanning for is the deeper fear, the fear that lives in men who have been hurt, the fear that makes a man stay perpetually casual to protect himself, the fear that whispers, "Don't let her matter too much." She can smell that fear, brother. Her nervous system detects it the way a compass detects north. And when she detects it, something in her goes cold. Because here's the sacred truth that almost no one talks about. A woman who genuinely craves an older man is not looking for someone safe from pain. She is looking for someone brave enough to feel it. Someone who has been through enough, lost enough, built enough, buried enough, to no longer need emotional armor against real intimacy. She is looking for a man who is not afraid to let something mean something. The wrong response to the surrender test is deflection, irony, sudden humor used to reduce the weight of the moment, a casual shrug dressed up as confidence. The right response? You hold the moment. You don't rush to fill it. You speak from the actual place inside yourself where the feeling lives, not performing openness, but demonstrating it. You let her see that you are a man who has already decided that life is too short for love that lives at arm's length. You don't confess everything. You don't perform depth. You simply, and this is the precise thing, you simply let it land. When a man passes the surrender test, something happens in a woman that is chemical, neurological, and completely beyond strategy. Her nervous system sends a signal her whole body receives. Something that says, "This one is safe to feel something for." That is what emotional surrender actually is, brother. It's not weakness finding weakness. It's depth finding depth. It's her nervous system finally, after all the scanning, all the testing, all the quiet measuring, finally giving her the signal that the work is done. She craves the older man because she believes, she hopes, that he has done enough living to be that man. The question she is asking across all three levels in every form the test takes is simply this: have you? And that's the real conversation underneath all of it. Not tactics, not strategy, not the right thing to say at the right moment. The conversation she's having is with the actual man underneath your words, with the version of you that exists when no one is watching, when there is nothing to prove, when you have walked through enough of life to stop faking and start being. Most men will never read these signals. They'll sit across from a woman who is giving them every opportunity to be seen, and they'll perform instead of show up. They'll be clever instead of real. They'll be interesting instead of present. Not you. Not after this. Because now you see the map. You know that when she asks what you're looking for, she's asking if you know who you are. You know that when she opens the door to your past, she's checking whether you've made peace with it. And you know that when the moment gets real and warm and weighty, the worst thing you can do is run from the weight. The man she craves doesn't just pass these tests, brother. He doesn't even think of them as tests. He moves through them like a man who has already decided who he is. And that decision, that rootedness, is what she's been looking for the whole time. Not someone to save her, someone who doesn't need saving. Someone who has saved himself. That man she will follow. If this truth hit you somewhere real today, do one thing. Share this video with a man who needs it. Not because I need the numbers, because there are men out there right now, failing tests they can't even see, losing women who genuinely wanted them to win. Let's change that. Subscribe if you're serious about the real work, not surface-level tactics. The actual understanding that changes how you show up in every room you walk into. And next week, I'm going to show you something that happens after she's chosen you. A moment most men completely mishandle that unravels everything they built. You do not want to miss that one.